was my first novel for YA readership, sort of 12 plus, I set out to write something that might explore a friendship between two boys who are under a lot of academic pressure. So there's one who's very rich and very charming, who's had everything he's ever wanted in his life, but he's not so good at sort of telling the difference between right and wrong. And then he has a friend who is very dreamy and visionary, and they're both under a lot of pressure, but the visionary one tends to sort of escape into a slightly sort of fantastical place of Norse mythology. And the book is about the development of their friendship in these rather pressurized conditions.
Hi, I'm Hersey, and this is Deepwater, and that's my debut novel. And this is, without giving away, basically you have to say this is a sulky novel. Which, and if you don't know what sulkies are, they're people who turn into seals, or seals that turn into people. And I wanted this is aimed at teens really, so it's sort of 10 to 13ish. And I was really interested in the idea of when you get to be a teenager, puberty is horrendous, and you go through so many changes already that I wanted to explore something where, like, her changes are a lot bigger than most of our teenagers. I thought if you have to deal with like turning into a seal, that's a real problem. So
and being teenager as well.
Yes. And so that's, and it was just an exploration of the Selkie myth, and I set it in Cornwall, and I made it a contemporary setting.
We should stop.
I'm Elizabeth Corr. That's my sister Katherine, and this is our first book, The Witch's Kiss, and this is just about to come out, The Witch's Tears,
next week.
And The Witch's Kiss is a gender-reverse retelling of Sleeping Beauty, with lots of guts and gore and literally people having their hearts being removed, and a bit of love interest and a baddie
and a sibling relationship, which was really the most important thing I think about the book. And an Anglo-Saxon prince who's asleep under a lake for 1500 years.
Yes.
And this is the second book, which is coming out next week, and it explores what happens after the witch's kiss and how people will deal with how the Mary, who's our teenage witch, deals with death, I suppose, and grief, and what happens to her and Neo's relationship in the fallout from the witch's kiss. But I can't say too much more. Can I say anything more without giving it away?
No, I suppose we just gone on developing our world, so there's a bit more world building, and we're bringing wizards and the division between witches and wizards.
And there's another fairy tale in here as well.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell you which one it is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it either, but I know. I just want to pick up on a point that Lou said, about focusing on the Selkie myth. And I think all of you focus on sort of one particular story, myth, fairy tale aspect. And I'd like to just draw out the reasons, like what attracted you to write about that in particular. Like what attracted you to write about the Norse mythology, about the Selkie myth, about the gender reverse Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. What has attracted you to that? If you want to begin, and then we'll work our way back down to Julia, if you don't mind.
I think we've just always loved, both of us loved fantasy and fairy tales, and the idea of working on a fairy tale which was traditional in its outline but told from a different perspective really appealed to us. And we love witches as well. They're just a lot of fun, and lots of girl power and sisterhood.
Fantasy lovers who couldn't have written, I don't think, a YA contemporary.
No, not to save our lives probably.
No, we just love everything to do with fantasy, Tolkien, Terry Pratchett.
Yeah. Neil Gaiman.
We couldn't not write fantasy.
No.
Neil Gaiman.
Yes.
Yes, well, I'm Joseph Campbell fan. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's big on myth, and bringing myth up to date in a way is quite important if you want to keep myth alive. And well, not done to death. I like vampires, are great, but they might have their time again. I have to say that when I did the Selkie one, my publisher, well, not my publisher, but it went out to a few publishers, and one of them said, well, we like the writing, but I was expecting a sexy mermaid, and what I've got is a seal coughing up a mackerel. Not sexy. So, if you want to write myth, think about that in advance, because they do like sexy publishers normally. I was very lucky to get a publisher for a seal coughing up a mackerel. But I love the myth, and so I chose that one.
Yeah, I think it has to be something, as you say, that dovetails with something that you're desperate to write about, and the myth maybe just chooses you as opposed to you choose it. I don't remember consciously deciding to put Norse mythology in. I just really needed a kind of fantastical terrain that would be a really sort of wild and sort of brutal counterpoint to a privileged London day school. And because I have taught Greek and Roman myths to death, I didn't want to do one of those. And I had actually done me writing the story of Ragnarok, and I actually used that, my old English homework, in The Other Life, nearly word for word, because one of the children is writing his own tale of Ragnarok, which is the Day of Judgment, the final battle of the Norse gods. But I also, so I use it as a kind of intertext, and the characters in The Other Life do end up in quite a sort of broad foresee the end of days, and he is killed by a dart of mistletoe by Loki, who is another shapeshifter. And these characters were archetypal beats that I knew that I could sort of superimpose on my characters in quite a subtle way, so it's not like, oh, and he was him and so forth, but it felt so natural that I don't remember when I really chose it. It just was like it was always there.
Thank you. And I guess as well, I also wanted to pick up, particularly when you were talking about The Witch's Kiss, that it is quite dark, you know, with like literally removing the heart, and there is that darkness, but kind of talking about a different kind of darkness and light and dark with each of your protagonists. And there's kind of a light and a dark side. I mean, there's the magic that kind of affects them, and the sort of, you know, the idea of power and how, you know, how they use it responsibly. And I guess what I'm asking you is, how does the sort of, how do you portray that? How do you get around to the, with the light and dark, how do you, like, the magic kind of, sorry, can I ask that question again? Give me 1 second, I did have it. So the portrayal of the different kinds of magic that you use, you know, each of the characters, how they sort of, the different kinds of magic, I'm going to go on from that question because I don't think I'm doing it very well. What influenced you and inspired you then to write? What different kinds of literature and different kinds of culture did you draw upon?
Do you want to?
Yeah, we'll start with you again, Judy.
I think you were going to do blind date, and then it should be. I think they're always really democratic about who's done. So literary influences.
Yes.
For the book. So obviously the prose Edda. I read quite a few translations of those because I wanted to sort of absorb them. And the Saga of Asgard by Roger Lancelyn Green. Diana Wynne-Jones and Penelope Lively, to me, are the British fantasists who explore that kind of seam between the mundane and the fantastical, the child that kind of encounters the realm, but we're not set purely in that realm, we're constantly kind of crossing to and fro. There's sometimes that ambiguity between what is real and what's imagined, and they, to me, are very inspiring. So Fire and Hemlock by Diana Wynne-Jones, The Whispering Nights by Penelope Lively. I did Fire and Hemlock, like Bible, so good, what a book. I'm trying to think, Donna Tartt's The Secret History, not YA, but in terms of that protagonist who is maybe needing to excavate a dark secret in the past that's occluded and he lied about. And I'd say Donna Tartt's quite a big influence, and Agatha Christie actually. I think.
Lou?
Oh, yes, I suppose. Yes, it's difficult, isn't it, when you draw? I loved Diane Garner as a child, and Diana Wynne-Jones. I really liked a lot of those sort of writers that brought myth and stuff into their writing and made it kind of contemporary, so that you're really interested in the fantastical world. Well, I've got to admit, this one, I found a book in a junk shop which is called The People of the Sea. It's still in print. It was written in the 1930s by a man called David Thompson, and it's a sort of travelogue. He went round all the islands of Scotland and Ireland. He spoke Gaelic, which must have helped enormously, and he talked to the people who still believed in the Selkie myths and still had the old tradition. And he himself had a sort of Selkie experience. It's a wonderful book, kind of a bit heavy-going, but I was just gripped. I loved it, and I just wanted to read that in. I've read other Selkie books. It's always a myth that people are kind of drawn to, but I thought this David Thompson book. Honestly, I'd recommend it. It's, if you like travel books at all, it's that wonderful mix of travel, war, history, and a world that, like, I don't know if you've seen that documentary of, is it St Kilda, that island that nobody lives on anymore? And there's an amazing, yeah, they've got lots of seabirds there now, but it had a whole community and they all had to evacuate back in the, I think about 1920 or something. But there's film footage of them. And it's very, very haunting, that kind of island life. And this book brings that atmosphere.
Do you think he believed it himself, or was he just?
I think he did, because he had this experience as a boy that was very odd, very odd. Which I love books where people actually have magical experiences, and they try and explain it away, but they can't quite do it. And I just love that, and he definitely had one of those with a selkie. Well, it was a seal that somebody tried to kill, but it was singing to him. Boom! It's amazing. Yes, that's I like magic stuff.
Yeah. I guess we grew up reading the same sort of things, and the Dark
Susan
Rising.
Cooper, we love
It's one of our
Susan
favourite
Cooper,
series.
yeah.
We just love that.
And that mix of real life
Yeah.
and magic.
Yeah.
He's
And going back and forth in time as well. And the Box of Delights we used to love. And
Lord of the Rings.
yes. Asticoat. And
Yes. That's Penelope Lively.
Lively, and gosh, the third one with the teenage, The Ghost of Thomas Kemp.
Oh,
So everything like that, and we just used to read the same thing. So
Yeah. And then the Anglo-Saxon stuff, I guess, just came out of, we both did history, and I've always been fascinated by older history, like, Greeks and Romans, and then I got into reading about the Anglo-Saxons. I've forgotten the name of the writer, but there's a brilliant book called The King in the North by Max, I want to say Max Irons, but I know that's not right. Max, anybody know? Max? Help? Anyway, it's called The King in the North, and it's about Oswald, who was King of Northumbria back in, 600 and something, I want to say. And he was apparently the inspiration for Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, which of course immediately had me hooked, because I'm like, oh, Aragorn. So his books are brilliant. And so I read a load of those, and we talked about where would we want to set the historical bits of the book, and how long has the prince been asleep, and we just thought Middle Ages is kind of a go-to fantasy generic, so we wanted to do something a bit different, and Anglo-Saxons are definitely different.
I wanted to ask a question. This is one that I really, really want to know. If you had to introduce one character, one fictional magical character into your world, who would it be and why?
From somebody else's book?
From somebody else's book, yeah. Which one? Because you've talked a lot about your influences, and there's some fantastic influences. So I'm just curious which.
A magical character or any character from a book?
It can be any character. I'd love it to be magical though.
And into the world.
That would be
I'd
amazing.
like to see
That would be
Bran
amazing.
kick his ass down on it. So.
I would love that too.
Yeah, I think that would be good. What about you?
I'd probably put Granny Weatherwax. I just love Granny Weatherwax. She's just such an amazing witch, and she would just sort the coven out. Nobody would step out of line, and she'd just have it all
I think she and Gran might have a lot of problems, though. I think
I know, but something tells me Granny Weatherwax would win.
I think I'd probably take, honestly, if I'd known in advance, I would have thought of a lot of things.
Sorry,
All right,
I sprang that
that's
on you.
fine. I just think I quite like baddies, so I'd quite like to take a baddie out of Harry Potter, and there's some very good ones. Even some
Bellatrix?
half bad, like Bellatrix.
Bellatrix would go down well, I think.
She'd be good. Or even Rita Skeeter, someone who's
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
interesting actually, yeah.
Rita
she
Skeeter
could
would
really
work,
get
actually.
She would work really well, yeah.
Just, or the Dementors. They're really nasty. I think they were one of her best creations.
Yeah.
They have some mer people, don't they, in one of them?
They have some what?
Mer
I
people.
think it's the Goblin, yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
God, I read them all. I can't even remember them.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
they're
Oh,
in
yes,
the
they
lake,
do.
aren't they?
They do in the. Oh, sorry. Yes, they do. Right.
It's a really good question, and I'd like to know You some classic school characters like William Brown from Just William, or maybe Calvin and Hobbes could come in from America. But actually, I was thinking that I would probably put in some real people, and I'd have Metallica because there's lots of. And what is that? There's a scene when they go to Download Festival and they go and see Metallica play, which is based on all the times I've seen Metallica play, and I think that they're clearly what's missing from the book, and I don't know why it
should be in there.
is actually.
Oh, sorry. I guess my next question is, I kind of wanted to know then about, you know, the story itself. What, it's quite difficult, obviously, because I don't give spoilers, but if you're able to talk around that.
I know, well, I wrote something that made her cry, and she might have just been being over emotional.
I possibly was, but I mean, the reason I cried was because it was so grim when I read the initial draft. And there's a bit where Gwydion, the bad wizard, takes out the heart of the love interest of Jack and feeds the heart to Jack, and it was just, I didn't expect it. It was a nice sunny afternoon, just didn't expect it, and it literally made me blubber. I just don't know why. I'm very protective of our characters, and Catherine's obviously also trying to kill them off all the time, and I'm desperately trying to save them. But yes, it did upset me,
I was quite pleased with that scene.
She was, yeah.
How does that work then, if you're always trying to kill them and you're always trying to save them? It's quite a good balance, isn't it?
So, sometimes, I mean, the Jack, I don't know, everybody hasn't read the book, but there's one character who we had a debate with whether he should live or die, and everybody, Lizzie wanted to save him, but everybody else was like, our agent and editors were like, no, he's got to die, so
They
that was
won.
alright, we won.
But Katherine wanted to kill off quite a key character at the end of The Witch's Kiss, and I said no, that character may not be touched. And
No, I thought that was in this book we were going to kill.
no.
There's quite a lot of killing going on here.
That person is still hanging in there by their fingernails.
By a thread, by the sounds of it.
Well, I think I'd keep I had a whole problem with the superhero thing, you know, like how do they keep their pants? And the thing is, when my heroine Danny turns into a seal, I had a huge problem of, so does she wear her clothes? Doesn't she wear her clothes? There's a whole scene, a transformation scene with her grandmother, who she had never met before, and they have to like kind of get their kit off. That was probably one of the hardest. But I really wanted it to work. I wanted it to not be kind of weird. But of course, it is bloody weird. Isn't it? Oh, sorry, it is really weird. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Most people don't.
It does work, you know.
Yeah, it does. It does. But I remember reading that particular scene and thinking, oh, she's done this really well, because actually, where do your clothes go? You know,
Yes, where do your clothes go
become
for
a seal?
superhero?
What do you do with your pants?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's very hard, isn't it? Because in Jacob Black, is it Jacob Black from Twilight? He has a little kind of bag he has around his ankles.
Which I think I'm pretty sure it's not there.
So handily he just stashes them and gets them back out again.
Yeah. No, I just thought it just would work better. It'd just be weird. Why would you have clothes on underneath the sealskin?
Yeah.
But you captured the emotion of it quite well. That was like the one I would have picked. That was my favourite scene in the book. Yeah, because I just feel like it was the connection there between family and the sort of emotion and the first time of transformation.
Yes. Right. Oh, good.
I think there's, of course, it's alluding to two different kinds of difficulty. There's the emotional difficulty of going through a scene that's sort of quite visceral and hard to read or hard to write, and then there's the ones that are architecturally difficult. And I think for me, on rewriting, there are certain scenes that were hard because I had to do sort of forensic things with people discovering certain things at certain times, and X needs to know why, and Y needs to pretend otherwise. And those ones were the hard ones, where you're kind of not being creative but more editorial and mathematical, and those I struggled with hugely. And then there was but I think Ben should try to kiss Zara, and I remember I see why Ben's tried to kiss Zara. Kiss attempt. Yes.
I guess one of the things I'm quite interested to know is as well, because you're all kind of writing around magic and myth, and I would love to know like what's next for each of you. Like what's the next story, or are you able to talk about that at all?
So my next book, I think Hobie, who is my 12-year-old protagonist, is quite a proper sort of low-key like anti-hero, and he's really, talk about dark and light, he's got good qualities, but he edges onto the dark side of things. And so my next narrator is an anti-heroine, and I think there will be a sort of slight fairy tale intertextual aspect woven through it, but not much. And I'm thinking I might go back to ancient Greece for the one after, having sworn off it.
I'm hoping, if I can find a publisher for it, that my next book is a land goddess one, and I mean I have written it. I'm just editing it now as you go along. But I've made her. She was the goddess of battle when Boudica went into battle. She called on Andraste, and so I've made her into a kind of rather angry land god because it's an anti-fracking. Okay? Anti-fracking story. Basically, I would like that to be the next book. Whether a publisher will take it or not, I don't know, because people find fracking controversial and they might not want to take it. There's a problem with writing, isn't it? So I have got other ideas. I'm writing another one as well. So. But they're all going to be kind of myth type things.
Well, we have left Mary and Leo in something of a quandary at the end of book 2, so hopefully there will be a third book which will resolve the story.
There has to be. Sorry, no, I've got to find out. Yeah, I have got time. Well, they've got sense people. Very nicely.
Great.
So that's our plan anyway, that once we get everything sorted with and we get an editor, hopefully it's got our columns. We're going to crack on with that, and we've got lots of other ideas as well, but they are all because we are the wall fantasy basically of various descriptions, witches and wizards and various other people who have different kinds of powers. And
Yeah, we were asked to do it. We did a blog on YA boyfriends. And
all of our
favourite
boyfriends
YA
are
boyfriends, and they're all
fantasy,
fantasy. We couldn't think of anybody who wanted to
Yeah.
have this
Boring, otherwise.
Who made this list?
We did it
Who made
together.
this list?
We were like,
Magnus Bane,
Okay,
who was on the list? Yeah, Magnus Bane we loved, and
Baz and Simon from Carry On.
Yeah.
Who else was it?
and the guy from whose name we'll forget, from the Joe's
Goddess,
from
Lucas.
the Goddess, Lucas, and from the
Josephine Angelini Starcross,
yeah, Starcross.
Yeah. So yes, we will just continue in the same vein.
And yeah, when we looked at it and said,
More
"Oh, they're all magical people," and then we put somebody contemporary on, and we were like, "No."
You don't have magic powers. We won't even pick up the
Not
phone and speak to
interested.
you.
That's fair. I'd like to open up and see if there's any questions from anybody. Does anyone have a question? Yeah.
Serenity Rowley Dougal, you might have heard of her. She wrote a book about when science and magic meet science, magic and religion. There's this Smiley figure, the previous Aga Khan, in his memoirs, he starts off by talking about science, magic and religion. Now, your books are probably, could you say anything about that relation, science, magic and religion? Is that?
I think it's an interesting relationship. I've been reading recently about John Dee and Isaac Newton and the hermeneutical, if I got that right, sort of science. So, the idea that it was really only in I guess, 19th, 20th century that there was this complete division between science and magic, and the earlier centuries, and certainly the Anglo-Saxons, had a much more holistic view. They were all the same thing. So I think it's very interesting that we've kind of drifted away from that and now see them as so diametrically opposed, and science and religion being sort of in the magic camp for lots of people. So I think it might be something interesting to write about down the line.
Yeah, I think fairies again come into that. Apparently, until really quite recently, fairies were considered, but even by the church, as like something real that was there. The whole otherworld thing was definitely there.
Yeah.
It's within this kind of last, I don't know, since 18 something or other, Victorian age really, that's separated and you don't get the kind of belief in fairies.
Apart from in Iceland, where apparently everybody's like down with the elves.
Yeah, I should.
Believe in the elves. I'd quite like to live in Iceland.
Very appealing.
I have nothing to add to these pearls of wisdom on science, magic.
Thank you very much.
I guess that's why people love fantasy so much, isn't it? Because everything's been demystified and
I think
normalised,
people
and
are
people are looking for something.
Escapism, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Can I just follow up on that? Because I mean, there are some things in science that are now coming almost back round to stuff that looks kind of like magic. You look at quantum physics, and what on earth is that? So do you think there could be fertile territory for writers to explore?
I definitely, yeah, and I'm sure. I mean, I'm not sort of up to speed with a lot of recent science fiction, but I'm sure people are covering that sort of thing. And I do think scientists, if you look about things like the multi-universe theory, it is just a theory, and it's like, oh, well, we can't explain this, so we're going to explain it away by creating a load of universes where anything could happen. And what is that other than creating a myth, basically, about our origins, because they don't know. So.
We don't believe in God, but we do believe in design.
It's very popular. I personally think that. I thought all gods are possible.
Yes.
Really.
And those goalposts, they will just keep shifting as we keep discovering new things. I was reading a book called The Narratology of Science Fiction a couple of days ago, called Worlds Apart, and I can't remember who wrote it. I think it's someone's PhD thesis, and I'd never looked at it like this before, but he explains that the whole science fiction came into, obviously with Frankenstein 200 years ago, materialised because we suddenly started looking, we human beings, at the sort of geological progress of the planet as something that could be mapped onto a timeline. We suddenly understood that the past had affected the present through scientific discovery, and ergo the present would affect the future or several possible futures. I never thought about where science fiction actually started.
Worlds Apart.
Worlds Apart, the narratology of science fiction. I just never seen it in this. I just imagine it sort of appeared like any other form of literature, but I think it's because of geological progress. So people they've suddenly realised that as opposed to creationism, maybe there was some sort of more linear evolution of the planet, and therefore they had this concept of the sequence of events more, and the literature sort of came as a response to that, or so this man posits.
But it's true though. If you look at even the Bible, I mean, okay, 7 days is a bit out of the question to me. But if you put that into kind of geological timescales, it came in the right order, didn't it? There's nothing time is relative.
Sorry. Thank you. Any more questions? Anyone? Have you got any online?
There was somebody who
microphone.
tweeted.
Okay.
One sec.
I have another one.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Could be allowed another one. What would be your advice for someone working with myth and magic? What would be your sort of number one bit of advice for somebody trying to write with those things?
I probably would say don't just read other myths and don't just read the fairy stories. Read history as well, because often history is at least as peculiar as what people imagine. So and can be an amazing source for ideas and looking at the world through other people's eyes, because people did see things differently. So
And I would say that you can always explain stuff away, can't you? Like if you've got glittering vampires, you can always, Fawkes has got cloud cover 9% of the year. You can make it work. So just go wild with your imagination.
I would say establish your rules, even if it takes a very long time, and you have to sort of to and fro with different people giving you different ideas, because I think for your reader, child reader or any other reader, if it doesn't add up, whatever that you're constructing her particular type of powers, and you obviously thought about that loads, and I would say that's the most important thing. And I would also probably say find a really interesting theme of myth or magic that really, really appeals, because then you'll be stuck with it for years and years.
Building your world, that is the most important thing. It's got to be believable. Whatever your world is, it doesn't matter if it's another planet, it's got to be believable.
Yeah, you have to believe in it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because your reader will know if you don't. If you're not quite sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone knows, but we are live streaming the event. So Zena over in the corner has some questions that people have been tweeting in online.
So from Lottie Francis, who is kind of chiming into what you've just said, is there anything that inspired your book's worlds? Like anything specific?
A lot of Cornish holidays. Just that's why I chose Cornwall. I've never been to Ireland. It's a Selkie myth. It should have been in Scotland really, or Ireland, and I made it Cornwall because it's sort of Celtic and I knew it well. I like geography to be good.
I guess the Anglo-Saxon history that we've been reading was inspirational in terms of the setting for the past. Because we knew the fairy tale we were very familiar with, but it was how to make something different out of the setting of the fairy tale, I think. And making sure we got it right, you know, that the details were believable.
Yes.
I think for me, the geography of London was really important because I needed to map lots of things that happened and unfolded over terrain that I knew really, really well because I was dealing with bridging lots of fantastical elements and obviously lots of heavy metal and lots of other stuff. I wanted to set it in in city streets that I knew really well. So I'd say that geographically for me that was important.
Have you got any more questions? Okay. I think that's it then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you put your hands together and say a big thank you to Lou, Julia, and
Chris for hosting.
So if anybody wants to get books and get them signed, just come up and see Katherine and Elizabeth.